The Tennessee Volunteers have a dilemma. It's Jeremy Pruitt and it's Phil Fulmer. Hi, everybody. I'm Marky Billson. And before we break down the story that Trey Wallace reported that the NCAA is looking into the Tennessee Volunteers football program for potential violations, recruiting, impermissible benefits, and otherwise, I want to get the story that came out after the game. Jared Guarantano, four-year starter for the Tennessee Volunteers until just recently. That quarterback, Guarantano, announced he was going to go into the transfer portal. Remember, he can be a grad transfer. You do, in this COVID season, I think, get your eligibility, another year of it. Frankly, has there been ever a less impressive four-year starter at quarterback than Jared Guarantano? And why it took Jeremy Pruitt so long to realize this, we'll never know. We'll never know. The man is simply not intelligent. It's as simple as that. A lot of people speculating, by the way, Guarantano might go to Arkansas State, where Butch Jones, his former coach, was just hired as head coach. Arkansas State in the Sun Belt Conference. Remember, Guarantano's father played for Butch Jones at Rutgers. Guarantano's father was a very good wide receiver who played in the pros coming out of Rutgers in the early 90s when Butch Jones was a grad assistant there. But that's very speculative. The situation at Arkansas State is they actually have two underclassmen quarterbacks. So, they want to continue to develop them, or do they want to bring in a Guarantano? Who knows? Who knows? Regardless, let's talk a little bit about this report that came out. When it came out on Twitter, on Fan Run Radio, that Trey Wallace had broken, that the NCAA and University Compliance Department at Tennessee was investigating the football program for alleged recruiting violations and impermissible benefits, you had to think that the fan base was thinking, oh, good, maybe Jeremy Pruitt can now be fired for cause and they won't owe him the $12.8 million buyout. Now that truly speaks to what a disaster Jeremy Pruitt has been. You're actually contemplating, well, it'd be good to go on probation if it gets rid of the coach. That's unspeakable. Anyway, when asked about the allegations that there have been impermissible benefits to the Tennessee Volunteers and recruiting violations in his post-game press conference, Jeremy Pruitt did his best to stay silent, as he often does. In fact, he had this quote, and I'm going to just recite it myself here. I ain't seen no article. Anytime in college athletics, you're going to have typical compliance stuff, and that's all I know. He actually said that. I hadn't seen no article. This is a man, the leading representative of an institute of higher education. I hadn't seen no article. Evidently, Jeremy Pruitt is pressing to coach next year in bare feet. But if it is typical compliance stuff, let me ask you this. Why was Eric Gray, star running back of the Tennessee Volunteers, suspended a half hour before kickoff? Why was Brian Maurer, backup quarterback? Probably along with Guarantano on his way out. What about assistant coaches Derek Ansley, defensive coordinator, and running backs coach Jay Graham? When asked, Pruitt would only say Gray was unavailable. Repeatedly. Gee, thanks, coach. That's very insightful. Tim Owens, who is a reporter for one of the TV stations down in Knoxville, was a little bit more, insightful, possibly, because he put on Twitter, and who knows what tweets are. I mean, it's not Chicago School of Journalism here, but he said he had a source that said the whole SEC knew the Vols have been cheating. I have some crazy stories about how they would hand out cash. At the very least, some coaches will be fired with cause. And he then tweets out that someone sourced close to the program said that Eric Gray was receiving improper benefits. So Tennessee is cheating to go 3-7. I was trying to think. I mean, what game did they really need Eric Gray? He scored a touchdown against South Carolina, and they won 31-27, but you get the idea that Ty Chandler probably could have handled the entire load in that game. Who knows? Maybe so, that's the difference between 3-7 and 2-8 and all this. However, if this is legit, and let's face it, tweets from a TV reporter, a guy who is a reporter for an outlet called Fan Run Radio, and I've had Trey Wallace on my old sports talk show. It's not that Wallace is a bum or anything like that. I don't believe that. But the situation is such that, those aren't the leading reputable sources, Twitter and Fan Run Radio, that one would get to say, oh my goodness, the Vols are going on probation. It's not the Knoxville News Sentinel here, A television report, maybe. Twitter, though, it's modern era, and it's come from a TV reporter, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff said on Twitter, let's face it. But it boils down to this. If Pruitt is dirty, then athletic director Phil Fulmer is dirty. And for 3 years, all Phil Fulmer has been able to do is tell us what a wonderful hire he made as the head coach. Let's not forget the Vols are back, and they're going to take a bite out of everyone's ass. Well, instead, this past year, we saw not only the suspension of Graham and defensive coordinator Ainsley, but the firing outright of defensive line coach Jimmy Brumbaugh during this season. And that was after Tracy Rocker took a lateral position at South Carolina. So we're looking at a situation in Tennessee this year where the defensive line coach was fired. Jerry Pruitt took over for him, and then Pruitt called the defense against Texas A&M because Ainsley wasn't around. Plus, there was no Jay Graham. There was down at some point 3 coaches this year. And by the way, thank you, Jimbo Fisher, who may have prevented his own chance at winning a national championship in the Tennessee game. And I say this because he had the chance to run up the score late against the Vols. But in the final drive, Tennessee faced nothing but runs from the Aggies, who then marched the ball all the way down to the Vols 3 where they kicked a field goal. They could have went for it and tried to score that last touchdown and such and put 4 more points on the board, thus making a 34-13 victory look even better at 38-13. Try to impress those playoff committee people, but they didn't. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Fisher used to hire Pruitt as his defensive coordinator and did not want to run up the score against his old defensive coordinator when his old defensive coordinator was down. I think it's as simple as that. But that old defensive coordinator was calling the defense against A&M. And by the way, the first 4 drives the Aggies had, they scored every time. So Tennessee finishes 3-7. It doesn't look like they're going to go to a bowl because, although there's some talk of the Music City Bowl and the Liberty Bowl, there's now reports out that say, those minor bowl games this year, I mean, it's just having too much trouble finding teams. Nobody's really excited about 3-7 teams going to bowl games. 4-6 Kentucky going to a bowl game. 2-8 South Carolina going to a bowl game. Nobody wants to see that. So this year we'll just, stick with the major bowls. Them themselves are the NIT of college football. The New Year's Six, yeah, it's the NIT. The Gasparilla Bowl, that's the CIT. I mean, or whatever, But you're having a circumstance right now where basically those bowl games, thankfully, are not going to be played. And I hope they go away forever because it's high time for college football to start saying, look, 6 is not worthy of postseason. 80 of our 130 teams are not worthy of the postseason. Keep it to the conference champs, keep it to the elite that win 9 games, maybe 8 if you have a star player on the team or something like that, or, it's a real good story, but keep it to the elite. And really, there isn't all that much interest, I think, in even the New Year's Six bowls anymore. But regardless, it's a joke that there are 40 bowls. Regardless, let's go back to what I said. Here's the Tennessee Volunteers situation. They're coming off their 8th losing record in 13 seasons. They're down numerous scholarships if they go on probation. They get cheap to go 3-7. Let that sink in. Yet they still have a fan base with expectations of winning championships. Now, what coach will come into that situation? None. Not only ones that are desperate for a job. You know what kind of coach goes into that situation? I'll be brutally honest with you here. Derek Mason. Yeah. Hey, he's from Vanderbilt. He's clean. We need somebody clean to come in and clean up this program. That's who comes in. Somebody like that. He's desperate for a job. He knows that, it's just like Vanderbilt. If I go 6-6 initially, it'll be fine, But going 6-6 is looking like that's not going to happen. Now, what if the investigation turns out to be about nothing? I will say that, tweets from a TV reporter, as I said before, that's not necessarily a whole lot to go on. Even Wallace, like I said, it's not that he's not an energetic reporter. He is, but working for a fan-run radio, I once suggested that Tennessee should have more media access at fan-run radio, or not at fan-run radio, but a producer from fan-run radio lambasted me for that. But I thought that you should have more media access at Tennessee. I was criticized by fan-run radio for saying that. That speaks more of rooting than reporting. Let's face facts. But right now, in addition to the coaches that left or were suspended or whatever, Jeremy Pruitt doesn't run a clean program. He said to dismiss 3 players, most recently Kevon Bennett, son of NFL star Cornelius Bennett. He was cut from the team after he was found with a Glock and all kinds of baggies of marijuana. He was dealing drugs. That's what the Knoxville police think. Yeah. Okay, good off-field incident right there. And let's not forget Bryce Thompson, a hero of the victory against Vanderbilt. He turned the game around with his pick 6, but should he even be on the team? Last year, remember, he was suspended after saying he was going to shoot up the school. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you have a woefully inarticulate coach who can't even put together an honest depth chart. Guarantano was listed as the starter for this game. Brett Samaglia, kicker, not on the team, was listed as the starting kicker. 5 positions were said to be up in the air on the Vols depth chart. Here's the deal. If you fire Jeremy Pruitt, you're going to basically be saying, play it again, Sam. The fan base does think it's 1998. That's why Guarantano wasn't good enough for them. The athletic program is unwilling to make their head coach one of the highest paid in the conference, despite the fact that they remain one of the more profitable programs in college football. And you've got Phil Fulmer, whose previous hires, let's look at this, Carl Torbush, who was hired as the ETSU head coach under Fulmer's guidance when he was helping resurrect the program there. And Carl Torbush was straight out of 1998. And he was an assistant coach at, where was it, Liberty at the time, not even a coordinator. But, in 1990, he was head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. And I spoke with Fulmer, and he said, there were a lot of people that recommended him to me and such. His first choice was the current head coach of ETSU, Randy Sanders. But Sanders had just taken the job as the offense coordinator at Florida State. So he had to turn it down. This speaks of, who's in my Rolodex? It doesn't really speak of doing a search. So you've got that guy making a hire again. And I don't think that Fulmer is going to bring in a really good coach. Let's remember Les Miles showed some interest when Fulmer was the AD there. But Miles fell through rather easily. Now, Miles is making $1.5 million from Kansas' salary. His company was never making $3 million. Right now, Jeremy Pruitt he's in line to make more than $4 million next year. Right now, the contract is $3.8 million. Why in the world would Les Miles turn down Tennessee and more money to eventually go for less money to Kansas? And the only reason I can think of is that he thought that Fulmer would be too meddlesome. Let's face it, Fulmer never thought he should be fired as the head football coach at Tennessee. Nothing really wrong with that. I mean, most people who are fired don't think they should have been. But the situation is such that Fulmer did not hire another head coach to take over the Vols from Butch Jones / Brady Hoke. Who he hired was a defensive coordinator, whose personality is not that of a leader. It's one he hired Pruitt to take orders. And Fulmer's been working with the offensive line. How's that worked out again? And intrusive? Do I want to go there? Especially with potential probation, especially if they're not going to pay me what the rest of the SEC gets, especially if my fans think that I should go there and win the national title. Yeah. I wonder if, even if the program does go on probation, that Jeremy Pruitt shouldn't stay a little bit. You save a little bit of money. You don't have to go into the whole. I mean, I know that if there's probation, you might be able to fire him for cause. There's lawyers with that, and there's usually a settlement and all this sort of stuff. And I know the boosters pick it up. It's booster money that wouldn't be paid to potentially a new coach. But what you could do is you got Phil Fulmer basically not say anything for a year. The program, whether they hire a new head coach or they don't, it's going to lose in the immediate future. If you hire a coach right now, yeah, you probably got the buyout, and it's a bad situation. If you let Pruitt hang for another year, you'll have a losing record next year. But you know what? Fulmer can save face. And I know you say, well, what if they go on probation? Such, well, you know what happens if they go on probation? It's a big deal. What's probation? Improper benefits? Say, Jeremy didn't know anything about this stuff. I mean, this is the program that sent out 16 coaches to say nothing to see here when it was reported that their previous head coach called a football player that had helped a rape victim a disgrace. Yeah. Probation, impermissible benefit. So what? So then what you're going to have is a situation where I could actually see Pruitt, losing a bunch of games, and halfway through the season or something, Fulmer comes in as a caretaker. Probably only win one game, like the season finale against Vanderbilt or something like that, and he rides off into the sunset. And it just reminds me of when John Majors went back to Pitt and went 12-32. He won his last game. It was a great photo shot of him being carried off the field after his last victory against Rutgers. It made the Panthers 4-7. Tennessee will be lucky to go something like that next year. And then what you'll have is that Fulmer, realizing he's over his head, he'll announce his retirement, not only as interim coach, but as the AD. And then what will happen is Randy Boy, the Tennessee president, will come in and thank him for his loyalty, and then the media will parrot that line, and they'll speak a wonderful job that Phil Fulmer did back in 1998, and also as an athletic director, keeping men's basketball coach Rick Barnes from going to UCLA. And meanwhile, the university administration is like, can we finally be through with all of this and look to a younger, fresher start, perhaps not even with any ties to the University of Tennessee. But until then, does anyone really think Urban Meyer is going to come to coach Tennessee? Really? Hugh Freeze? Wait a minute, Hugh Freeze? You're talking about Hugh Freeze coming to Tennessee? The votes are being investigated by the NCAA, and a leading choice among the fan base to come in and be the new head coach is Hugh Freeze. That's really all one needs to know concerning why the votes have fallen so far. Folks, if you like what I have to say, hit the like button on YouTube if that's where you're watching. You can certainly use the follower